Hey everyone, welcome to What Are the Odds? I am Robert Ferringo. Unfortunately, Raphael couldn't be with us this week, so you're stuck with me. Sorry guys, but that's all right. I will try and make it worth your while. Today we're going to break down the ACC, college football, some season win totals, some odds to win the conference, all that fun stuff. Before we get to that, I wanted to mention the free 60 down in the description. That is $60 free to be used at docsports towards any handicapper, any package, any sport, anything that you want right there. Also, I want to mention that it is football season. Next week, we have college football picks, real, actual, honest to God college football to bet. So take advantage of our early bird specials that are going on right now. That's $749. Get you the full season of any handicapper of your choice, okay? Everybody talks a lot about inflation these days and how prices have gone up. This is my 20th year. This is my 20th football season with Doc Sports. That price hasn't changed in 20 years. You are getting phenomenal value at $749. And if you use that free 60 towards it, it actually goes down below $700. That you're getting 26 weeks of picks. You're getting picks from now to the Super Bowl for the handicapper of your choice. So just phenomenal deal, phenomenal value. Get that out of the way, and then you're locked in for the full season. So, well, I'll have some other stuff to hawk throughout this, but let's just get going. Let's get going. Let's talk about the ACC. We already talked about the Big Ten and the SEC. So if you want to go back and look at some other videos, you can find out our breakdown on some of the top teams in those conferences. Top team in the ACC, there's no surprise, it's Clemson. Okay, top 5 team in the most recent rankings that came out. Championship expectations. Everybody has the exact same thing to say about Clemson. Clemson, stop me if you heard this. Yeah, Clemson has the most returning production of any team in the country. They do. They have 18 starters back. Cade Klubnik at quarterback. This is a deep and experienced Clemson team that's been together for a few years. You know, Dabo Swinney has really been hesitant to embrace NIL, transfer portal. He's been stubborn to a degree, and that's really held Clemson back over the last few years. But this is definitely his best team so far this decade in the 2020s. However, I am urging some caution with Clemson. Okay, this is not a national championship team. Okay, they're not going to win it all this year. And I'm not a hater. I'm just telling you how it is. I have watched a lot of Clemson football over the last 2 years. This team is good. I'm not saying that Clemson isn't a good team. I'm not saying that they're not a top 15 team. I'm not saying that they're not probably going to make the playoffs again this year like they did last year. They will. They will. But there's a lot of people punching Clemson national championship tickets, and a lot of people that are jumping on this Clemson bandwagon. I would be very hesitant with this group because I've seen enough of them over the last couple of years to know that this team is kind of a high wire act. They're really inconsistent. They're really erratic. If it was, and you know who agrees with me is Bill Connolly of ESPN. He's the guy who created SP Plus. If you use that as your handicapping, he has stated flat out. He's like, if it wasn't for turnovers last year, Clemson wouldn't have won the ACC and wouldn't have gone to the playoffs because they just weren't that good. And that's the truth. Okay. And turnovers are one of those statistics that wildly vary from year to year. So I am urging caution with Clemson. Their season win total is 9.5. They are plus 110 to win the ACC. I like season win totals. I don't like odds to win the ACC championship. But I feel like those are good odds because they are kind of in the driver's seat with the way that their schedule breaks down in league play and things like that. I do expect to see them in the ACC title game. The 9.5 season win total, the juice is minus 225 on the over. So there really is just no value there. Now, that LSU game in the opener, I think, is a little tasty. I will not have a rated play in that game because we have two talented and kind of desperate teams. LSU has lost their season opener. I believe it's 3 straight years. If Brian Kelly loses another season opener, the guy's head might explode. Really, literally may explode on the sideline. That being said, Clemson getting that as a true home game, not as a neutral site game. That game isn't being played in Atlanta or somewhere like you would expect it to be. Getting that game in Clemson, I think, is a massive, massive advantage. The number was 4.5 the last time I looked. Think there's a little bit of value on Clemson. Think there's a little bit of value on Clemson to win the ACC. There's no value on their season win total over, and there is zero value on Clemson winning the national championship. It is not going to happen. All right, the primary contender in the ACC this year is Miami. They're plus 380 to win the conference. 9.5 is their season win total. This is a team that I'm not as high on, okay? For me, there's still bad taste in the mouth for what happened with them last year, where they collapsed down the stretch and played their way out of the ACC championship game and played their way out of the playoffs. This team lost 3 of its last 4 games. They lost at Georgia Tech as a 10-point favorite. They lost at Syracuse as a 11-point favorite in a game that if they had won, they would have gone to the ACC championship game, probably would have made it into the playoffs. Lost that game outright, lost to Iowa State in their bowl game. Okay? While we're talking about losses in Miami, they lost their starting quarterback. Cam Ward was the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. They lost their top 5 receivers, and they lost, I believe it's 10 of their top 13 tacklers. A lot of turnover. This is not the same team. Now, I understand that they reloaded with a lot of transfers. They're one of these programs that's been extraordinarily active in the transfer portal over the last few years. Mario Cristobal has bought into that wholeheartedly. However, what you see with these teams that are constantly turning over half of their roster every year is that they're erratic from year to year. And you don't have to look any further than Florida State to see that in action. 2 years ago, Florida State goes undefeated, gets snubbed by the selection committee. They got screwed outright by not getting invited to the college football playoffs, the last of the 4-team playoffs, right? Come back last year, start the season in the top 10. Everyone's like, oh, they want revenge. They want to make up for what happened last year. They threw up on themselves. They won 2 games. They won like 2-10 last year. Why? Because they had a bunch of mercenaries on their team. They had a bunch of guys that came to Florida State thinking that they were going to compete for a national championship. They lost their first 3 games. They were out of the national championship hunt, out of the playoff hunt, out of the ACC hunt. So what do? They quit. They quit on the season. I think that Miami has the potential for that same type of thing to happen. They open against Notre Dame at home. They are underdogs in that game. If they lose that game, though, that's a hit, right? That's a hit early in the season to a new team with new leaders. They also have to play in 3 straight games. They get 1 bye week. They play South Florida, Florida, Florida State. All right? All in-state rivalry games, all early in the season. They are not going to win all 3 of those games. I promise you they are not going to win all 3 of those games. South Florida, a little bit tricky. They play Boise State in their opener. Alex Galash, they run the ball, physical team. They have an identity. They have played some big teams over the last couple of years. Played with Alabama for 3 quarters, played for Miami for a half. They're not a step-over team. Florida, not a step-over team. There's absolutely nothing that Miami is going to bring to that Florida game that the Gators are scared of. They've seen it all in the SEC. They play top 10 teams every other week. They're not going to be scared of the Hurricanes. And I actually kind of like Florida to win that game outright. And then they go to Florida State. Same thing. Florida State last year was a debacle. New team, a lot of turnover, new quarterback, coach who's probably coaching for his job. They're going to be a little bit desperate to get a statement win in that game. All right. Miami has 2 late season road games, like at Virginia Tech, at Pittsburgh in November. Miami does not leave the state of Florida before Halloween. I don't think they leave the state of Florida until November. But when they do, they got to go to Plattsburgh. They got to go to Pittsburgh. 2 places likely to have cold weather, 2 just kind of tricky teams that are good as underdogs and good at home. I think it's going to be tough sledding for Miami this year. This is not a team that I am very high on. I don't like those odds at plus 380 to win the ACC. Now, a team whose odds belie what I think are their true ability to win this league, and a kind of a sleeper team that I like, and they're getting a little bit of buzz nationally. So try and get out ahead of the curve with this team is Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is good. Georgia Tech can play. If you aren't familiar with Haynes King, their quarterback, guy's a hero. He's tough. He is a tough, physical, smart, experienced quarterback. He is just a really good college quarterback. The guy's not going to the NFL. He doesn't have the traits. He doesn't have the talent. But this guy is a very good college football quarterback, and Georgia Tech is a very good team. Haynes King had to miss that game last year when they played Notre Dame in the Georgia Dome. I think they ended up losing by 18 points, maybe like 31-13, something like that. If Haynes King had been healthy in that game, I think they could have beat Notre Dame. And that would have knocked Notre Dame out of the playoffs. So Notre Dame ends up going to the championship game. They wouldn't have if they had lost that game to Georgia Tech. They didn't because Haynes King doesn't play. Remember, this is the same Georgia Tech team that beat Florida State when Florida State was a top 10 team last year. They beat number 10 Florida State. They beat number 4 Miami. When Miami was ranked 4th in the country, Georgia Tech beat them. When Georgia was ranked 6th in the country over Thanksgiving weekend, Georgia Tech had them beat. They won that game. If not for some dodgy officiating, remember that was the 8 overtime games. They took Georgia to 8 overtimes, Georgia Tech. And they're maybe better this year. Tough physical team. They opened the season out at Colorado. Colorado, again, a lot of turnover, lost a lot of talent. They're going to be a much different team. They're going to be more of like a ground and pound team. So I expect that to be a very physical opener. If Georgia Tech can go on the road and beat a Big 12 team in a true road game, I think that's going to set the tone for what could be a very good season. So hop on that Georgia Tech bandwagon. Get off that Miami bandwagon and get on that Georgia Tech bandwagon. All right, another kind of sleeper team, or a team that I don't think their odds, season win total 8.5, odds to win the ACC at plus 8,000 is Louisville. Okay, Jeff Brom can coach. Okay, if you haven't noticed, Jeff Brom can coach. And I always like to say that when it comes to coaches, I don't only judge them based on their results where they are. I like to look at what happens where they were when they leave. This guy was winning at Purdue. This guy was taking Purdue to bowl games. That is an actual thing that actually happened. Once Jeff Brom left Purdue to go to Louisville, that has become the worst program, the worst major program in college football. Okay? This guy knows what he's doing. Got Miller Moss. You want to talk about X factors. One of the biggest X factor, maybe the biggest X factor in the ACC this year is Miller Moss. He was a transfer quarterback from USC. He was a starting quarterback for most of the year, got benched late in the season. He's going to the Cardinals. And he specifically said, I want to play for Jeff Brom because all this guy does is mold quarterbacks. He's the guy who turned Tyler Shaw into a second-round NFL pick. Tyler Shaw is not an NFL quarterback. Anyone that thinks he's going to win that job for the Saints, like if he wins that job for the Saints, they may win 2 games this year. Tyler Shaw is terrible. He was really good last year with Brown. Louisville is 19-8 straight up over the past 2 seasons, and 5 of those losses have come by a touchdown or less. These guys win, they beat good teams, and they have to play everybody. They have to play the top teams. They have to play Miami, Clemson, and SMU all in the second half of the season. So Louisville might not have the juice to win the ACC, but this is a really good team, and they are going to play a role in who does. They get Clemson on a Friday night. They get Miami on a Friday night. Big games. I think they're going to pull an upset in one of those 2 games. Don't know which one, but they'll be underdogs, and I will probably have money on them. So Louisville is another team that I don't think that their odds and their value is being appropriately marked in the marketplace right now. I think they're a little bit better than what the market does. So that is definitely a team to keep an eye on. Another undervalued team, a team that I like in the ACC, maybe not to win the conference, but just a team that I think is going to be better than what the market does is Pittsburgh. Plus 3,000 to win the conference. 6.5 is their season win total. So think about that. They're plus 3,000 to win the ACC. Louisville's plus 8,000 to win the ACC. So Pittsburgh, by a factor of 3, has better odds to win the ACC. But Louisville's season win total is 8.5. Pittsburgh's is 6.5. So square that circle. I understand they have a little bit more difficult non-conference schedule, but I don't think it justifies a 2-win discrepancy like that. Again, that is a discrepancy in the market that I think that you can exploit. I like the over for Pittsburgh at 6.5. This is just kind of a vintage Pat Narduzzi team. Okay, this guy is great in this underdog role. Not great as a favorite, great in that underdog role. They also have, this is a team, it's easy to forget, that started 7-0 last year. They were 7-0. They made it up to number 19 in the country before, the schedule got tougher. The wheels kind of came off late in the season. They get their quarterback back, Eli Holstein, second year in that offensive system. I believe he was an Alabama transfer, 15 returning starters. Keep an eye on this team. They play West Virginia. Okay, West Virginia, if you remember, they brought Rich Rod back. They play them September 13th. I think it's the Panthers' third game as that backyard brawl, right? If they win that game, there is nothing to stop Pittsburgh from potentially starting like 7-1. Okay, they get Duquesne in the first week, Central Michigan. Those are 2 wins. They play at West Virginia. But again, Rich Rod coming back, new team, new systems, new players. Are they going to be up to snuff that early in the season? If Pittsburgh, who won that rivalry game last year, if they can win again this year, that's 3-0. They get Louisville at home. They get Boston College at home. And then they play Florida State and Syracuse. It's a lot of winnable games right there. Okay, Louisville's going to be tough, but they get them at home. Florida State's going to be tough, but which Florida State team are they going to be? 2-10 team from last year, the 14-0 team from the year before, I think somewhere in between. But even if we give them a loss there and they beat Syracuse, a team they've owned historically, that's 6-1 to start the season against a 6.5 win total. I like Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's going to be a team like Louisville that's, maybe they don't get over the hump to win the ACC, but I think they're going to be a factor in this league. All right, 2 teams that I think are a little overvalued. I don't like Duke. I'm not a fan of Duke. Right now, they have the 6th best odds to win the ACC. They're plus 3,000 to win the ACC. Like Pittsburgh, just a 6.5 win total. Okay, Duke is not the 6th best team in the ACC, so I don't understand why their odds are like that. They went out and paid $2 million for transfer quarterback Darian Mensah. Okay, he was very good at Tulane for 1 year. 1 year he was very good, and he's coming from Tulane. So he is stepping up in class. This isn't like Miami paying $4 million for Carson Beck. Carson Beck played at Georgia for 2 years. Okay, was a national championship contender at Georgia. So him going from Georgia to Miami, I get it. Darian Mensah going from Tulane to Duke to the ACC, that's a step up. We don't know how he's going to respond to that. This is a team that barely beat Northwestern, barely beat Connecticut, barely beat North Carolina, and barely beat Wake Forest last year. Those are bad teams. So I understand that Duke's record looked nice in what was a rebuilding season. A lot of people like Manny Diaz. I'm sure he's a sweetheart. I don't know about Manny Diaz, okay? But I know that Duke is in the 6th best team in the ACC right now. They have 6 true road games this year. They have 2 back-to-back road trips, which will be tough. Duke is a team that I'm selling my stock on, and I think that you should be too. I think that they are an overrated, overvalued team right now. Another team that I think is a little bit overrated, a little bit overvalued is SMU. Okay, plus 850 to win the ACC, 8.5 season win total. Look, what they did last year was magic. What they did last year was awesome. Coming from the AAC conference to the ACC, everyone's like, it'll take a little bit to adjust to the talent and speed of the ACC. No. They kicked the door down. They peed on the living room carpet, and they slapped the ACC's mama. That's what they did. They won double-digit games. They almost won the ACC championship in their first year there. They were down 17, came back and tied, got off to a real slow start against Clemson, came back and tied the Tigers, ended up losing by a field goal. They were that close to winning the ACC championship in their first year in the conference, went to the playoffs. Love what SMU did last year. They're not doing it this year. Yes, they have their quarterback, Kevin Jennings, back. Yes, their head coach, Rhett Lashley, has led them to 22 wins over the last 2 years. Very good coach, built a very solid program. The problem is that the way SMU did their recruiting, scouting, transfers, they actually set everything up for that first year. You see FCS schools that know that they're going to move up to FBS do this. They'll redshirt a bunch of guys. They'll try and stack their roster for that first year in FBS. SMU kind of did that with their recruiting. They were set up very, very well for their first year in the ACC. So they lost a lot of experience and a lot of depth, and they lost it up front. They lost it on the offensive and defensive lines last year. So while they still have some skill position talent, they're not as hefty up front, and they just haven't been able to backfill, that roster the way that some of these other teams do through recruiting, through transfer portal, and things like that. So SMU is still going to be a good team. They'll be a bowl team. They're not going to fall off the map, but I don't think that they're going to be anywhere really sniffing winning the ACC this year. Again, I like the odds better on Pittsburgh, Louisville, Georgia Tech. Those teams, I think, have better chances, both because of their roster talent, coaching, and their schedules, than SMU necessarily does. So those are overvalued and undervalued teams. And talking about some of the teams at the top, I'm just quickly going to blast through kind of the others. And you can read a lot of this stuff. I'm releasing my ACC preview on docsports next Monday. So that article will be up where I kind of deep dive a little bit more, give some more stats, figures, and facts about these teams. All right, the next team is Florida State, plus 2,800 to win the league. 6.5 is their season win total. As we mentioned last year, they completely cratered. I don't know what we're going to get this year out of Mike Norvell's team. Florida State, a lot of turnover on the roster. They brought in Tommy Castellanos from Boston College. If you'll remember, he's the guy who quit because of an NIL dispute last year at Boston College. He's now their starting quarterback, throws a lot of interceptions, just not a very good quarterback, frankly. Experienced, dual threat guy, all that stuff, but I wouldn't want him on my team. He's already been talking trash about Alabama this summer. That's who Florida State plays in their first game. They're double-digit favorites. They're like 13.5-point underdogs. Florida State is a 13.5-point underdog against Alabama in game one. If Alabama comes and punches Florida State in the face in game one, could it be here we go again, kind of like last year where they tanked in September and were out of it and everyone kind of quit on the coaching staff? So Florida State, I think they're going to be better. I think their talent level is going to be better. Again, they won 2 games last year, so better isn't a very high bar to clear. But we'll see with this group. I don't think that they're going to be competing for the ACC championship. And I feel like if they go 6-6, go to a mediocre bowl game, something like that, that might be it for Mike Norvell. He might be heading back to a mid-major program. So there's just a lot of blow-up potential for Florida State. There's, as much as any team in this conference, there's such a wide spectrum of how things could go for the Seminoles team this year. All right, Virginia Tech is next, plus 350 to win the conference, which makes you think, maybe. If you remember correctly, heading into last year, Virginia Tech was a big buzz team, okay? Because 2013, they won like 4 out of their last 5 or 5 out of their last 6, won their bowl game, brought back 16, 17 stars last year. So Virginia Tech was like everybody's sleeper team in the ACC last year. No, did not go well. We are now in year 4 of Brett Pry, and I don't know if this guy can coach. I know he's good at shaking hands and kissing babies and doing stuff with boosters, doing all the stuff that Justin Fuentes didn't do with that program. Why he was kind of run out of town, out of Blacksburg. But can Brett Pry win games? I don't know. Kyron Drones, their quarterback, good athlete, good dual threat guy. He can play a little bit. Is there enough talent? Is there enough depth? I don't think so. Doesn't mean that they can't jump up and bite someone. As I mentioned, they get Miami in November. Okay, that could be a moment. That could be a moment for a statement win. Brett Pry might need to win that game to save his job at that point of the season. So Virginia Tech's going to be one of those teams that I think if you pick your spots with them, I wouldn't trust them as a favorite, even in the non-conference against their weak opponents. But I like them a little bit as with some underdog value. So we'll check that out. They play South Carolina in week 1. Going to be a very interesting game. 2 real athletic quarterbacks, 2 teams with a lot of turnover, 2 teams with a lot of question marks. If Virginia Tech is competitive in that game, I think it's on the road at South Carolina, I believe. I don't think that's a neutral site game. If they're competitive in that game, that bodes well for them heading into the season. If they get run by South Carolina, again, the knives might come out at some point for Brett Pry this year. All right, next is North Carolina, plus 4,000. Season win total, 7.5. Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson. There. Got out of the way. That's all you've heard about that. These guys any good? I don't care about Jordan Hudson, how hot she is, how hot she thinks she is. I don't really care about Bill Belichick, to be completely honest with you. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Are these guys any good? That's all I care about. They played TCU. They're home underdogs to TCU in their first game. 43 new players on that roster. Went full-blown transfer portal. Didn't bring in a lot of stars. Brought in a lot of projects. These guys going to be any good? That's all I care about. I'm on the under season win total, that 7.5, because they got to prove it to me before I'm buying in. They may get rolled. They may get wrecked by TCU in that first game. That's a real good TCU team, real experienced team, kind of lurking there in the Big 12. They score points fast, don't really defend. Neither has North Carolina the last few years. TCU puts points on the board. They could turn North Carolina's lights out if they're not ready to play. Don't know what this Tar Heels team is going to look like, but I'm treating them, until they prove differently, I'm treating them like Colorado year one with Deion Sanders. Remember they had a couple upsets early? Everybody jumped on the bandwagon, and then they just went right off the cliff. They were like 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 games, something like that. It was just like bet against Colorado every week. That's how I'm treating North Carolina until they prove otherwise. And that's how I recommend you play North Carolina. If you're hesitant, if you want to wait and see, that's fine. I understand that. There's a lot of uncertainty around this team about what product they're actually going to put on the field. But for me, uncertainty creates value. So I don't want to wait until everybody realizes, hey, they're not as good, not as good as everybody expected them to be. It's going to take a while. He's going to have to build this program. So I'm fading this team until they give me reason not to. All right, next is NC State, plus 4,500 to win the conference. Also a 6.5 season win total. And I got to tell you, if you're waiting for that breakout season for NC State, which I feel like people have predicted 3 times in the last 7 years, it's just not going to happen with Dave Doran. It's just not. The guy is what he is. He's an 8-5 coach. That's what he's going to get you. He's going to get you to a bowl game. He's going to pull an upset or almost pull an upset against a team like Miami or Clemson or one of the big dogs in the ACC. But are they going to keep it together for 3 months, win 10 games, and go to the ACC championship? No. I think they're the only of the original ACC teams that has never won the ACC championship. And they're not going to this year. Good team. They averaged, they allowed 30 points a game last year, and every single team on their schedule, including, I think, the FCS team, I think they played Western Carolina, scored at least 21 points. If they don't fix the defense and fix it fast, I'm talking that's what you need to keep an eye on with NC State in September football. Did they improve defensively? If they didn't, they're a 6-6 team. If they did, they're an 8-5 team. And they're another team like Virginia Tech where I think they'll have value in spots, and as an underdog, not so much as a favorite. All right, next, my alma mater, Syracuse. 5.5 win total, plus 7,000 to win the ACC. Syracuse won double digits last year. Fran Brown won a Coach of the Year, a new Coach of the Year award. Fran Brown very much has this program pointed in the right direction. Okay, he is one of the best recruiters as a head coach that Syracuse has had in 25 years. He is bringing in talent through the transfer portal and through his recruiting classes. However, I don't know if any team in the country lost more production relative to what they had before and what they replaced it with than Syracuse. I think they only returned like 39% of their offensive production. They lost Kyle McCord, quarterback, that Ohio State transfer, who led the nation in passing yards. They lost their starting running back, LaQuint Allen. I believe he's in Jaguars camp. They lost their top 3 receivers, including Oronde Gadsden, who's going to make the Rams this year. They lost Pena, their top receiver, who transferred to Penn State. Part of the reason everybody's so high on Penn State is because they got Syracuse's best receiver. So they lost their quarterback, running back, top 3 receivers, and 8 of their top 10 tacklers from last year. That's a lot of talent. Syracuse isn't Georgia. They aren't Alabama. They aren't Florida. They aren't these teams that just reload with talent every year. They don't know who their quarterback is going into the season, and they have one of the most difficult schedules in the country. They have to play 5 road games against teams that are in the preseason top 20. 5 of them. Tennessee, Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame, SMU. All on the road. I don't know if they're going to win any one of those games. They also have to play Georgia Tech on the road, who I think is maybe the second or third best team in the ACC. So it's Syracuse's program is better, but it's not going to show up in the win-loss column this year for them. So they're a team that I think is in for a really tough season. All right, Virginia's Virginia, year 4 of Tony Elliott there. They have a real cushy schedule, but this is still a bad team. Bronco Mendenhall, his sudden retirement, then he came out of retirement, really kind of stuck this program. So they're still spinning their wheels. Cal, plus 15,000 to win the ACC, 5.5 season win total. Watch out for Cal. They're not going to win the ACC. That's not what I'm saying. Watch out for Cal as kind of a little sneaky underdog this year. They should have beat Miami last year. They played a lot of close games last season. They upset Auburn last year. They lost to Miami, Pitt, and NC State by a combined 4 points. So beat Auburn, almost beat Miami. It is hard for college kids to make that long trip from the East Coast out to California and play. It's tough. That messed with some teams last year. Yes, they lost Jaden Ott, their stud running back, but Justin Wilcox, he always has a good defense. He always has a physical team, and he always has kind of a sneaky underdog team. They avoid Miami, Clemson, and Florida State this year, and I think they have just enough wiggle room where they might be able to sneak to a bowl game. That 5.5, I think, offers a little value, and the Cal Golden Bears are going to be a team that I will probably use once or twice this year at home against unsuspecting East Coast teams. Wake Forest sucks. I'm not going to bother with Wake Forest. They brought in Jake Dickert from Washington State. Hooray. Good luck. We'll see. And then Stanford is pulling up the rear. Stanford's a mess. Here's all you need to know about Stanford. Stanford is an underdog to Hawaii in week 1. Power conference team playing maybe the, 8th best team, 7th best team in the Mountain West, and they're underdogs in that game. Andrew Luck came in. He's a general manager. He hired Frank Reich. So you're going to see those names and think, ooh, maybe they're on the right track. No. They didn't have any talent. Last year, they were a terrible team, even though they sprung some weird upsets. Fired their coach unceremoniously and then had a ton of guys leave after spring practice. And they have not been able to fill that roster with talent. So Stanford is a dumpster fire right now. So, all right, that's it. That's my ACC breakdown. Thank you to Barry Thompson and Anthony, the new members that signed up. Welcome to the Docs Sports team. Don't forget to check out Docs Daily, Docs Thursday football release party, Docs YouTube Premium, where you get access to certain services, including Indian Cowboy and Craig's 3 rated plays a day. I'm not sure if I think Lenny has his service on YouTube Premium. A lot of things going on over at YouTube Premium. So subscribe to that and check that out. Put that in your rotation as well. Don't forget about our 3-for-1. I mentioned the early bird special at $7.49. Don't forget the 3-for-1 special. You sign up long-term with the Doc Sports handicapper, and you get to pick 2 other guys that we give you 2 free weeks with. So you can compare their results, their style, and find the guy. We're all about finding the guy that's right for you. Okay. Some guys like Strike Point Sports, super selective, 5-6 football plays a week, really just honing in, pushing all their chips in on a few games. Guys like me, I'll have 25 games on a football weekend and won't think twice about it. And I expect to win. 7 out of 10 winning years. So I do win. Won last year, going to win again this year. So it's all about, we have a lot of handicappers because we want to find the right person for you. So take advantage of that 3-for-1. So, all right, that's it. I got a tea time. You guys got a weekend of football ahead in the preseason. Next week, the real bullets are going to be flying with some week 0 college football. Raphael will be back next week. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us at What Are the Odds? Carpe diem, and good luck.